Here is something that does not add up. The most careful planners, the ones who research, who ask good questions, who never act on impulse, fail at almost the same rate as everyone else. Proverbs 3, verse 5 explains why. Lean not on your own understanding, not weak understanding, not lazy understanding. Your own understanding, however sharp it is. That is the contradiction this verse exposes, and it is why Proverbs 3, verse 6, pairs it with a second instruction. Acknowledge him in all your ways, that most well-planned decisions quietly skip. Over the next few minutes, I will show you exactly where that gap shows up in your own decisions, why sharper judgment alone will never close it, and, in the last part, why closing it, not sharpening your judgment, is what actually makes your paths straight. So let us find the exact place where this breaks, not in theory, but inside a decision you would call good. Picture a man at his kitchen table on a Sunday night. 2 job offers in front of him. He has done the work. He built the spreadsheet. Salary, commute, health coverage, the growth of each role over 5 years. He called 2 friends in the same field. He slept on it twice. By every standard we teach, this is a person deciding well. And yet, sitting there, he feels the same thing the careless person feels. A quiet uncertainty that no amount of comparing has removed. That uncertainty is not a flaw in his research. It is the edge of his understanding. And that edge is the whole subject of Proverbs chapter 3. Notice what the verse does not say. It does not say, lean not on your weak understanding or your lazy understanding. It says your own understanding, the sharpest version you have. That single word moves the problem. Most of us assume our decisions go wrong because we did not think hard enough. So we double down, we gather more data, we make a longer list, we ask one more person. We sharpen, and the man at the table has already done all of that. His judgment is not the low-grade tool the warning seems to describe. It is the best instrument he owns. Proverbs is telling him the best instrument he owns still has an edge, a place where it simply stops. Here is why it stops, in plain terms. Your understanding can only weigh what it can see. It can price the salary, but not the manager you have not met yet. It can map the commute, but not the phone call 3 months from now that reshapes the whole department. It can compare what is on the table, but every real decision is decided partly by what is not on the table. The parts of the future no research reaches. That is not a knowledge you failed to gather. It is knowledge that does not exist yet on this side of the choice. So the careful planner and the careless one arrive at the same wall. One walks there slowly with a spreadsheet. The other stumbles there fast. But it is the same wall because it is built into what understanding is. And this is where the pattern hides in ordinary life. A couple prices out a house down to the closing costs and the number that undoes them 2 years later. A job loss, a repair, a change no calculator held, was never a column they forgot. A father maps his son's next 5 years and cannot see the one conversation that changes everything. We are not bad at thinking. We are finite at thinking. Every one of us is deciding every day on information that runs out exactly at the moment it matters most. If the language of your own understanding ever felt like an insult to your intelligence, hear it the other way. It is the most honest compliment Scripture pays you. It assumes your mind is sharp and tells you sharpness was never the thing that was missing, which is why the practical move is not to think less. Keep the spreadsheet, make the list, call the friends. Proverbs never mocks the careful. What it does is name the limit that the careful are the most likely to forget, precisely because they did everything right and can point to it. The reckless man knows he guessed. The diligent man is the one most tempted to believe the wall is not there because he cannot see it from where he stands. So the gap is real, and now we can locate it. It is the edge of the best judgment you own. But naming the edge raises a harder question, and it is the one everyone skips. If sharper judgment is not the fix, if more of the same tool cannot reach past its own edge, then what actually closes the distance? Because the verse is about to tell us the failure is not a matter of degree at all, it is structural. And that changes what the whole solution has to be. So if the sharpest judgment still hits a wall, the natural instinct is to sharpen it further. And that instinct is exactly the mistake, because the problem the verse is describing is not how good your understanding is. It is what you are asking your understanding to hold. Look at the actual wording of Proverbs chapter 3 again, because the Hebrew is doing something our English translations soften. The verse pairs two different actions. In the first line, trust in Yahweh with all your heart. The word behind trust is batach. Its sense is to rely on something with confidence, to feel secure because you are resting on it. Then the second line, lean not on your own understanding, uses a different word, shan. And shan means to lean on something the way you lean your full weight against a wall, to prop yourself up, to let a support carry the load. That is confirmed in the standard Hebrew lexicons, and once you see it, the verse stops being a vague warning about pride and becomes a precise diagram. Here is the diagram. Both words describe leaning. The question the verse forces is not whether you will lean. You always will, everyone does. But what you rest your weight on. And notice, it never tells you to stop understanding. It tells you to stop leaning on your understanding. Those are not the same command. You can use a thing without resting your whole weight on it. A carpenter uses a level constantly. He does not lean his body against it to hold himself up. The instrument is excellent for measuring and useless for load bearing, and that is the whole point. Your judgment is a measuring tool. The verse says you have been using it as a support beam. That is why sharper judgment cannot fix this. Sharpening improves the measurement. It does nothing about the load. If the beam is in the wrong place, a more precise beam in the wrong place still fails. The defect is not in the quality of the tool. It is structural. You have put the weight of the outcome on something that was never built to carry an outcome. Think of the man from the kitchen table. When his decision keeps him awake, he is not failing to measure. He is feeling the strain of leaning his entire future against a spreadsheet. And some part of him knows the spreadsheet cannot hold it. More columns will not relieve that strain. Only moving the weight will. And this is where most of us have quietly misread the verse for years. We hear, lean not on your own understanding, as think less, or distrust your mind. And either instruction feels wrong because God clearly gave us minds to use. But shan is not about thinking. It is about weight bearing. If you have ever felt guilty for being a planner, this is your release. The verse is not against your planning. It is against your planning being the thing that holds you up. Keep the plan. Just take your full weight off of it. Which reframes the entire failure we started with. The careful and the careless fail at nearly the same rate, not because their judgment is equally weak. It plainly is not. But because both of them are leaning on the same kind of support, and it is the support that gives way, not the sharpness. One leans on a careful plan. One leans on a hunch. And the wall behind both is the edge of what a human can see. Structurally, they are propped against the same thing. So the verse has diagnosed the problem down to its mechanism. Not weak understanding, but weight in the wrong place. And that diagnosis demands a second action. Because if you take your weight off your own understanding, you have to put it somewhere, or you simply fall. Proverbs knows this. That is why verse 5 never stands alone. Verse 6 names the exact place the weight is supposed to go, a single instruction that most well-planned decisions leave out entirely. And that instruction is next. So take your weight off your own understanding. And then what? You cannot lean on nothing. This is the exact moment most well-planned decisions go quiet, because verse 5 feels noble and verse 6 feels vague, and so we keep the first half and skip the second. But the second half is the whole solution. Proverbs chapter 3, verse 6. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. That word acknowledge is where the weight finally goes. And it is far more concrete than it sounds. To acknowledge someone, in plain use, is to bring them into the room. When you acknowledge a person at a meeting, you turn to them, you include them, you let their presence shape what happens next. That is the opposite of a private mental exercise. And the verse does not say, acknowledge him in your big ways or your religious ways. It says in all your ways. The spreadsheet ways, the commute ways, the Tuesday afternoon ways. The instruction is not to add a prayer on top of a decision you have already closed. It is to bring Yahweh into the room while the decision is still open. Watch how ordinary that is. The man at the kitchen table has already been leaning his whole weight on 2 columns of numbers. Acknowledging him is not erasing the columns. It is stopping before the choice hardens and actually asking, not which job pays more, but God, what are you doing in my life that these 2 doors are part of? It is holding the plan open in his presence long enough for something other than his own sight to shape it. Sometimes that is a scripture that reframes what he thought he wanted. Sometimes it is a conviction that will not leave. Sometimes it is simply peace settling on one door and lifting off the other. He still uses his mind. He just stops using it as the final wall to lean against, and lets the God who can see past the edge carry the part his sight cannot reach. And this is the piece the careful planner is most likely to skip, precisely because he is careful. He has a process, and the process feels complete. He runs it start to finish and never leaves a gap where anyone else gets to speak. The reckless man at least knows he is guessing. He might cry out. The diligent man can point to his work and quietly decide he does not need to. That is why verse 6 is aimed straight at the well-planned decision. It is not correcting sloppiness. It is correcting a self-sufficiency that looks from the outside exactly like wisdom. If this sounds like it requires some special spiritual technique, hear how simple it actually is. To acknowledge Him in all your ways is not a formula you might get wrong. It is a turning, the small, repeatable act of including God in the everyday choice instead of informing Him of it afterward. Before the email goes out, before the offer is signed, before the hard conversation, you pause and you genuinely bring Him in. That is a thing an anxious beginner can do as fully as a seasoned believer, because it was never about eloquence. It was about direction, which way you are leaning. So here is the practical shape of it. Keep making your list. Then, before you commit, do the one thing the list cannot do. Hand the weight of the outcome to the only one who can see past the edge of your sight, and ask Him into the choice while it is still yours to make. That is where the load was always meant to rest. But notice the verse does not stop at the leaning. It makes a promise about the result. He will make your paths straight. And that promise is the part we most often misread, because we assume straight means easy or smooth or exactly what we planned. The Hebrew behind that word says something more precise, and it is the key that finally closes the paradox we opened with. That is where we end. So here is the promise. Read the way the Hebrew actually reads it. He will make your paths straight. The word behind straight is yashar, and its sense, confirmed in the standard lexicons, is to make a way straight, to level it, to clear it, so it runs direct toward where it is meant to go. Notice what it does not mean. It does not mean smooth. It does not mean easy. It does not mean a road without a single hill. A straight road can still climb. What Yashar promises is not the removal of difficulty. It is that the road actually arrives, that your path runs true instead of wandering, that it leads somewhere instead of circling back on itself. And that single correction closes the paradox we opened with. Remember the contradiction. The most careful planners fail at almost the same rate as everyone else. Now you can see why. Sharpening your judgment produces a more detailed map. It has never once produced a straighter road. Straightness was never a property of your sight. It is a property of your direction, of what you are leaning into. The careful and the careless wander for the same reason. Both are steering by an understanding that runs out exactly where the path gets hard. The verse does not fix that by upgrading the map. It fixes it by handing the wheel to the one who can see the whole road. You do not get a straight path by thinking harder. You get it by leaning your weight where it was built to rest and letting Him make the way run true. That is the answer the whole video was walking toward. Not sharpen your judgment. Close the gap. The failure was never a shortage of intelligence. It was intelligence leaning on itself. And the fix was never to think less. It was to stop propping your future against a wall that ends, and to trust the God whose sight does not. If this spoke to you, subscribe. There is fresh manna here every single day. And if you have made it this far with me, you are exactly the kind of person this verse is written for. Someone careful enough to plan and honest enough to feel the edge of it. Leave that honesty in the comments. It helps more people than you know. Now, let me bring it home. Here is the truth to carry out of Proverbs chapter 3. Trust in Yahweh with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. Those are not two nice ideas. They are one instruction about weight. Everything you decide leaning. The only question the verse ever asked is what you are leaning on. Your understanding is a gift. sharp, useful, God-given, and it makes a fine map and a failing wall. So use the map. Just take your weight off the wall. Bring him into the room while the choice is still open in all your ways, not only the desperate ones, and then trust the promise for what it actually says, not that the road will be easy, but that it will be straight, that it will lead you home. Most of us have spent our lives trying to see farther. The man at the kitchen table finally slept, not because he found a third column, but because he stopped asking his own eyes to reach past their edge. The path did not get smoother, it got straighter, and some part of him had known all along that the wall could not hold his weight. So before your next real decision, the one already sitting on your table, ask yourself the one question the spreadsheet cannot. In this, am I leaning on my own understanding, or am I leaning on Him? Tell me below about one decision where you are learning to lean on Yahweh instead of your own understanding. Scripture explained, faith applied, life changed. This was your daily manna. Come hungry tomorrow.